It's going to help me with that.
4,
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Warrant Committee, March 1st, 2023. Madam Secretary, would you please take the attendance for us?
Yes. Today we have Kristen, Stephen Rhines, Allison, Lori, Steve Geiser, Tom, Judy, Jay, JJ, Amanda, O'Henny, Emily, and Dave.
Thank you. We have a quorum. I call the meeting to order. The first item of business that we have tonight is a proposed budget for the Council on Aging. Would you ladies please come on up and let us hear what you have? Thank you.
Just helping the old lady.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name's Christine Stanton. I'm the Director of the Council on Aging, and I'm joined tonight by the Council on Aging Chair of the Board of Directors, Lorraine Sumner. And I did submit a PowerPoint just to, here it is. Thank you very much. Thank you for your assistance. So I just wanted to sort of give an overview of all the exciting work that we're doing at the Council on Aging. Just many of you don't look like you're over the age of 60 yet, so maybe many of you have not participated in any of our programs. Maybe you've only been to the building to vote or to get your flu shot. So this picture of the parking lot is a typical day at the COA. We are at capacity on most days, which we're a bustling place to be. A lot of people say, you know, we're their country club, and they're thrilled that they have a place to go in town, that they feel comfortable and safe and enjoy socializing with others. Next slide, please. So just some numbers, just to familiarize yourself. So I have the census figures here from 2010 to 2020, and total town population only increased 6% in those 10 years. But as you can see, the number of adults age 60 plus increased 45%. So there are 8,300 adults over the age of 60 in the town, and that puts Milton number 59 out of the 351 cities and towns with the amount of elders or seniors, older adults that we have. So the Council on Aging is servicing that many more people in the last 10 years. And according to AARP, nearly 90% of adults over the age of 65 want to age in place. So that means that's adding to demand on our services. So even if somebody downsizes from a single-family home in town and moves to a home inc or a Fuller Village, they're still utilizing the services of the Council on Aging. So I'm fairly new in the position. I started in December of 2019, and we had 838 names in our database. And as of yesterday, February 28th, we have 2,700, and averaging 47 new members a month. And that takes a lot of time and administrative hours to give those people tours, familiarize themselves with the activities that we have, to sign them up, get them in our database, and all that goes on with that. Next slide, please. So there's 3 pillars of the Council on Aging that I like to tell people what we're all about. The first one is outreach. So there is an outreach coordinator, full-time, and a part-time outreach worker. And a lot of people just see the gorgeous building that we have and think about coming up and taking an exercise class or have a cup of coffee with people. But the amount of calls that we get on a daily basis from people looking for help is really something. And I don't think a lot of people realize that we have that many people in town over the age of 60 looking for assistance. And for many people, we're the first line that they say, everyone says, call the Council on Aging, they'll help you. So we get calls from adult children, say, "Hey, Mom has Alzheimer's, dementia, we can't take care of her anymore in the home, what do you suggest we do?" We get calls, referral, if we go to referral requests, we get everything from, I need a plumber, I need an electrician, I need a roofer, I need a house cleaner, well, all kinds of things like that. Home health care, like I mentioned, a caregiver to come into the home and care for an aging parent or for a spouse. Housing assistance, we get many, many calls looking for housing. And as you know, there's very few options in town for seniors to go to, but we do help where we can. Social services would be referring people to Social Elder Services, which is the Aging Services Access Point, which Milton falls under. So they would do protective services, things like that, hoarding cases. Insurance assistance, so assistance with Medicare, insurance, long-term care, transportation intakes and referrals. We're getting many calls, and I'll touch on that later, for people needing transportation, mainly for medical appointments. And tech assistance, everything is on your phone or your computer nowadays, and something that really hits home for me is how people need to use your portal to get to your primary care or to get to a medical specialist. A lot of older adults don't have smartphones, so they're coming for assistance, and we're sitting down with them and we're logging them on, and oftentimes setting up an email address for them. So I'm very proud of my outreach team. They do wonderful work, and it's something that maybe you don't see, as I said. So FY21, we had 790 requests for assistance. FY22, almost 1,200, and so far, year to date this year, we're up to over 800. So we're, on a upward slope of maybe 1,600 or so requests. Next slide, please. So the next pillar is the programming, and like I mentioned, that's what you see. You see the beautiful building, the cars in the parking lot, the Tai Chi class that we hold on the basketball court, sometimes outside in the nice weather on Clapp Street. So we're running about 200 programs a month. So you can see we're up 200% in the amount of people participating in the programs. Our sign-ins, which are individual people signing in, saying, I'm here for yoga. They might come to the center and be here for yoga at 8:30, have a cup of coffee with someone after the class, and then go to a music class in the afternoon. So we encourage people to stay and spend the day, and it's a wonderful hub of activity. We have 25 instructors, exercise, painting instructors, different program instructors, and then we have additional presenters like authors, florists, guest speakers, nutritionists, and medical professionals. So another thing I'd like to note is that for programming, my outreach coordinator does all the programming as well, coordinating it. She does a fabulous job. We are building programming for people in a 40-year age span. So we're trying to appeal to people who are 60, 65, maybe still working, newly retired, to people who are 100 or 102 that come for a cup of coffee or a music therapy class or a chair yoga class. So it's quite a feat to appeal to that many people and keep everyone happy as much as we can. So you can see some of the programs that we offer. Cooking, photography, ukulele, Spanish, many different fitness exercises that appeal to younger people, like bar we introduced. We have a very vibrant pickleball group. Health education, we have a diabetes 8-week session for those who are newly diagnosed and how to manage it. Dementia Friends, which is an initiative to introduce people who may not be around anyone with dementia and how to deal with those people. Off-site excursions, we go to the MFA, Newport, the King Tut Immersive Exhibit. Recreation and entertainment, a lot of card groups, mahjong, very active. We have an active knitting group, social activities, special groups like knitting book club and ukulele studio, and wellness. We provide manicures, massage, and reflexology appointments. Next slide, please. And the third pillar is transportation. This is something else that you may see our vans. We have 6 vehicles currently. It's an aging fleet of vehicles. Our transportation is way up, 146% increase year over year. When I started, my goal was to really expand the transportation program because I understand how difficult it is for people who live alone, have no family in the area, maybe are going to an eye specialist where you can't drive. You need a ride. So we have people who use us once a year for an eye doctor and people who use us multiple times a week for medical appointments, physical therapy. So we provide individualized medical transport, and we do go into downtown Boston. We go to South Shore Hospital, and Dana-Farber is now in Weymouth. And so Weymouth, Quincy, Dedham, and Boston, really. We're doing many, many rides into Boston for specialists. And then we also provide grocery shopping twice a week. Our vans go to Roach Brothers in Westwood on Tuesday and Stop and Shop in North Quincy on Thursday. And it's a very needed service for people who no longer drive. So, next slide, please. So we did a sort of a mini outreach, kind of seeking feedback, where we put a box with some cards and asked, what does the COA mean to you? And I was blown away by many of the responses. To know the impact that we're making on people was quite something. It's very rewarding, I have to say. I really enjoy my job, and it's very rewarding to know that we're helping people in Milton that need it. So I'll just touch on a few of them. The COA has provided me with a refuge at a time in my life when I was going through a very difficult time with both health and family issues. I cannot thank the caring, empathetic, and supportive staff enough for all they have done for me. The town is lucky to have this staff. The COA is my lifeline, from transportation, fitness classes, culture and art classes, to meeting new people in town. I live alone and cannot drive due to vision impairment. The COA takes me to the grocery store each week and to my medical appointments, allowing me to hang on to my independence. I have belonged to senior centers in other states, and Milton's is the absolute best. I'm thankful every day for the support and friendships the COA has given me. I'm grateful for the transportation services the COA offers. I have physical challenges and frequent doctor's appointments. I'm often anxious about getting to my destination and finding reliable transportation. The COA drivers are friendly and respect my needs. They put me at ease and offer friendly conversation. The lectures and luncheons offer needed entertainment since I am single. Thank you for your kindness and accommodations. So it was really something to get these responses back, and just to solidify the work that we're doing in the town. Next slide, please. Thank you. So just briefly, FY22 accomplishments. We really expanded our communication and marketing. We redesigned the newsletter. We actually held a contest that we put the word out seeking Milton artists to submit their artwork. And so we chose 24 pieces of art which are adorning the cover of our newsletter beginning the end of last year into year 2024. So We have a bright, beautiful newsletter. It's very, yes, when people are anxious to receive it in the mail every month and see what are we running at the COA. So we are trying to attract younger, older adults, so again, people in early to mid-60s that, we're trying to do away with that stigma that I'm not old enough to go to the Council on Aging. And when people say that, you should hear the people in the lobby, they say, you don't know what you're missing out. Hold on, you should be here. So it's fun. Facebook, we really increased our presence on Facebook. We've been in the Milton Times weekly, either advertising upcoming programs of they're covering what we're doing. Milton Access TV, we've run some bits on there and some advertising. I've done presentations at Home Inc. and Fuller Village just to really expand the outreach of what we do and what we offer. We've hosted elected officials and department heads to allow our members to ask questions of, town officials that they may not attend many meetings. So it's nice opportunity. And we won the Milton Times Best Town Department that year. We also have a very robust weekly e-newsletter that comes out Monday morning at 9, and we use Constant Contact for that, and we have about 1,700 names on that, emails on that list. Next slide, please. So we expanded the programming, health and wellness offerings to 25 programs a week. We implemented new programs like Community Table, which many other town COAs have what's called a congregate meal site. The congregate meal site in Milton is at Unquity House, so we started what's called the Community Table, which is a luncheon for 20 to 25 people. We keep it small and intimate, and it's a 3-course meal prepared by a wonderful volunteer chef, and it's sells out right away every time we advertise it every month. But it's a wonderful way to socialize and have lunch with people that you may not know. Cup of Joe we instituted during COVID because we were able to have it outdoors because we have a beautiful patio, and now we have it every week. And it's coffee hour, and just if it's just a place to come and have coffee and talk. Bar class I mentioned, hiking and snowshoeing, line dancing, and I mentioned pickleball. And we've also introduced some evening programs. We've had a theater production with Riverside Theater Works. We've done Intro to Medicare for those turning 65. We have a walking group on Thursday evenings in the cemetery in the nice weather. And we participated in the Milton Moves program that the library had, and we shared our Tai Chi and line dancing instructors with them. Another thing we've tried to do is increase volunteers. When I started, there were very, very few volunteers, so we're trying to build that because that is a workforce, I'll say, in itself. And we've been fortunate that people are stepping forward to volunteer with administrative, with setting up and breaking down after our large events that we have a few times a month. So we're up to 25 steady volunteers. I'm sitting next to our #1 volunteer here. And we're so fortunate to have their input and their help. Next slide, please. So this year we've been working on healthy aging, evidence-based programs, the diabetes 8-week workshop and an 8-week workshop on balance and how to prevent falls. Where we ran a course called Deja Vu and Memory Training with a professor from Bridgewater State University, which was very well attended. We're trying to introduce therapeutic programming to address psychosocial needs, and that would be the coffee hour. We have a therapy dog that comes weekly and music therapy class. And we're trying to build partnerships with other town departments and organizations. Like, we have a very good relationship with the health department, Fontbonne, Milton Public Schools, and we're working with Curry to try to get some of their professors to provide some lifelong learning opportunities. Next slide, please. We had a very successful fundraising event last October that is going to become an annual event. It's called the Fit for Life Walk, and it's a 3-mile route, a 1-mile route, or a walk around the parking lot. And we raised $15,000, and that was for the Friends of the Council on Aging. They're the fundraising group, and we're fortunate to have them. And it was a very successful event. It was great to see people of all ages participate, and we hope to only grow that in the future. We brought applications for food stamps, fuel assistance, and mass health in-house. We have a volunteer who comes monthly by appointment to help people fill out those applications. We participated, we got a grant from South Shore Elder Services to address food insecurity, and what we did with that is we bought a CSA share at Brookwood Farm, and we would get a weekly delivery of produce, fruits, and eggs, and we established a list of people who thought they could use it, and we would divvy it up, and our drivers would distribute it every week. And we purchased a new wheelchair accessible van last year because the fleet is so aging, and we're getting more and more requests for, that's another thing, when a family member becomes wheelchair bound, you can't really get them in a sedan or an SUV anymore. So besides calling MBTA the ride, we have wheelchair accessible vehicles, and so we're getting more and more requests for that. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Many neighboring towns are copying what we're doing. We're seeing it in their monthly newsletter, and my program outreach coordinator does a tremendous amount of work securing these presenters and programming, and I said, it's flattery. It's flattery. You were doing it. Our people are enjoying it. It's not everyone has, the wherewithal that we do. So it's wonderful to see. And last year we were Milton Times Best Town Service. Next slide, please. I'm almost done. So I don't so our goals for next year, we want to move Milton towards an age-friendly designation, and that's something that is national. AARP spearheads that. It would be a very big undertaking when and if we decide to go for that designation, but the first step we'd like to do is implement the Dementia Friends program, and like I mentioned, it's a course that my staff and I are trained in to teach first responders and people of all different professions and all ages what you do when you encounter someone with dementia, and what the signs are, and how to talk with them and treat them. So that's our first step. We're expanding our outreach to communities of people of color and LGBTQ. We had 3 Black History Month events this year, and we have some Pride Month in June events coming up. We had a wonderful showing of 42 gentlemen who came to our inaugural men's breakfast last month, and the majority of members and users of the Council on Aging are women. Women live longer than men, and are unfortunately, and are more social and more apt to come to an exercise class or a coffee with strangers. So we were very excited and happy that we had such a showing of men in town, and it was great to see people, gentlemen in the lobby said, I haven't seen you since our kids played Little League together. I mean, it was just really nice. So we're looking for a couple of gentlemen to kind of spearhead this and take it forward and get some interesting speakers, but we're planning on a quarterly breakfast or luncheon for Milton gentlemen. So if anyone's listening out there, we're happy to have you. Contact us. We're expanding the volunteer program, which I mentioned. We're removing barriers to social isolation through outreach and programming. We're investigating grant opportunities to replace the aging fleet of vehicles. I have a 14-passenger van, which is a 2014, and an 8-passenger van, which is a 2010, year 2010. The 8-passenger van just died on Sumner Street a couple of weeks ago and is getting its transmission completely rebuilt. So the 8-passenger van is wheelchair, has a lift, so it's used frequently. And the 14-passenger van is what we use when we take people into Boston for trips to the theater and things like that. So they are aging, and I'm going to be investigating grant opportunities for that. So in terms of my request, the next slide, please. I don't have any big asks. My major increases are in utilities. Electricity has gone, I'm sure all of you know, has gone way up. So we're asking for an increase, pretty large increase in the electricity line. Fuel for the gas for the vehicles. There's a slight increase in the dues and membership line, which is tied to it's what we pay the Massachusetts Council on Aging every year, and it's tied to the number of residents over the age of 60. So since we had such a large jump, our dues are going to go up a few $100s. And then at the request of my COA Board of Directors, we'd like to request a supplemental budget request of $5,000 to support the programming. There is no programming line right now. Programmings are all funded by fees and donations. So I can let Chairman Sumner speak of this if you want, but it would be nice to have the support of the town supporting what we're doing in terms of programming.
We couldn't believe it on the board when we went to review the budget and so forth, and wasn't aware that the town doesn't support any of the activities or any of the things that we put on down at the senior center, and we couldn't understand why in this day and age, with the seniors who pay, myself included, high taxes here in the town, and we have to come up when we volunteer and bring supplies and so forth. Then there should be money from the town to help support these programs and activities that we are running. And we couldn't believe it on the board when we learned that there was nothing from the town supporting this. And the other thing we were surprised at, that when they have meetings there, it's under our electric bill. That's why it's increasing an electric bill.
So the building is really a large, the largest community meeting space in the town, and the select board, now with everyone coming back in person, the select board is meeting there twice, 2 evenings a month. School committee has been using it frequently, and anytime there's an EPA or a state meeting, we use it as the meeting place. So, it affects my small budget, my utilities, all pay for all those, and I'm happy to do it as a, community member, and I know we're lacking space that's needed for these necessary meetings, but it is coming out of my small budget.
They don't sleep either. They don't sleep. The staff doesn't sleep.
You're doing a lot, so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
This is amazing. It's I'd rather be a member there than the Weymouth Club.
Yeah.
A lot more better activities.
There's a lot. Yeah, you don't have to drive that far.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
How, have you tried talking to, say, like the churches to see if you could get more volunteers? Because I volunteered as a senior citizen when I was younger, and I still remember the impact it had on me, and how much the senior citizens enjoyed having some of the younger kids go in, and I still remember one woman I would go and see on a regular basis, and her name to a T. And so I was just curious if there was any opportunity to work with some of the churches or the schools who have to do community service.
Yes, one of the, I think it was the Visitation Parish, sent a group to help us around the building, and they also helped with outside with a little bit of landscaping, which was great. But they were a big help, and yes, we're trying to do more intergenerational programming and things like that, but yeah, we're
They're really
willing
good with technology.
Right.
Like, so I was just thinking of, because I know when you get confirmed, you have to do community service. So I was just,
In high school?
Yeah.
Yes.
I was thinking the exact same thing. So, there's a great book called Tribe of Mentors, right? So how do you leverage the amazing life experiences that you folks have to help these kids, right?
Yeah.
Right.
It's a great opportunity to win-win, I think.
yeah, teaming them together too. Because it impacted me at a young age just to
Right.
understand and to hear some of the stories and experiences. So
Right.
hopefully that can be an avenue for you guys as well.
Definitely.
Volunteers.
Yep.
Can you please give us an example? So you've asked for the $5,000 for the programming because the people who come to do program have to pay some fees. Could you give us an example of some of the types of fees that they have to pay and how much a fee would be?
We keep our fees extremely low, extremely manageable. Our standard rate is $5 a class, and that is $5 for an exercise class, $5 for an event that we have that would have a musical performance and a lunch, so you're getting entertainment and a lunch for $5. It's standard $5 a class. So some classes are like 6-week series, so it's $30. So that's the income for the classes, yeah, and the entertainment.
And so, like, how would you do it? Like, if or how are you thinking about doing it? Right? Like, so, like, with the $5,000, would you make classes free?
Yes.
And how would you would you be able to make all the classes free? Would you have to make some of the classes free? How would you decide?
It would probably be an event or a series that would encompass the largest amount of the population that we could. So our entertainment acts or musical acts and things like that you would call it are all going up in price, and food is all going up in price. So we would try to make some of those events free, no charge, whereas it's going to cost us maybe $20, $25 a patron. So we'd like to have maybe, 3 or 4 free larger events per year. And I'm very accommodating to people that I state in the newsletter, if you're financially insecure, please come to me. I'm willing to work with you. We also have the fundraising, and they are willing to supplement fees for people someone that may want to take a watercolor class and it's $40 and they, plus materials. We'll support them if they need it. So we're definitely not exclusionary due to cost.
I was going to ask you, how, with the cost of things going up, is that impacting our senior citizens? With the cost of food and everything. And now your dues going up. I'm just curious to understand more where our senior citizens are financially.
Right.
And how this is impacting.
We're seeing more and more people applying for food stamps and heat assistance, which is shocking. So that's enlightening when you see, an 85-year-old woman, single woman living alone in a, 4-bedroom colonial, just trying to keep her head above water. We're hearing a lot of that, and there's not no real downsizing in Milton. If you know the condos in Milton are $1 million, $1.5 million. You may get that when you sell your home, but, you know,
It's probably why there's a wait list at a lot of these places.
Yes.
That are more standardized with the costs.
right. Like Winter Valley has a long wait list, Home Inc. does as well. And
Not all programs do we charge, okay? Because I do about 9, and they're all free. There's no money involved at all, except that we could use supplies. Sometimes I caught my own from home.
Have you ever, because we bring in supplies for the school, like I do, I'll send them in with my kids. Have you done an outreach to see if people would be willing to, like, things that you need?
Some people do. Some people find out their mother has passed away and bring in a Mahjong set, which are expensive. They're like $79. And some of them have been donated, or they have been left in memory of somebody who passed that used to play Mahjong with me. So that's how we've accumulated our 5 Mahjong, that all free, yeah. There are ways of doing it. I'm saying all my programs, there's no money involved.
so we have not done outreach, I guess if people had like unused decks of cards and things like that.
Or even just
But-
supply, like anything for
but-
you to, for like supplies and running, like some of your events, like paper goods.
Like paper goods and
Yeah.
things, yeah.
Yeah, just to see if maybe, because I feel like Milton's just such a great town, to your point, and you have built a great group of senior citizens there, so maybe when you put in something in the Milton Times or,
Yep.
you know, or on Facebook, a lot of people will do the food bank in Mattapan for,
Right.
So if you ever get like needing, you know, maybe something I post there would be great.
Okay.
You know, just as my
Yes.
offering
Right.
input, because I know that that's what's great about our town is we rally around supporting our
Sure.
town citizens. So I was thinking maybe if you ever get, that's a great reason.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, and even for, you know, events and stuff like that, I'm sure people
Get
would-
sponsors
Yeah.
or
100,
donated
yeah.
baked goods or something like that.
Totally.
Okay.
Thank you. Let's see. I am told that O'Henny has his hand up, and then Amanda has her hand up. O'Henny?
And Jay, it's O'Henny, Jay, and then Amanda.
O'Henny, Jay, and then Amanda. O'Henny? O'Henny, are you muted?
Right, we can maybe come back to him.
We can come back to him. Jay, you are recognized.
Yes, thank you. Quickly, I'm in the pickup line here.
Jay
Can
Fun.
you hear me? Can you hear me okay?
O'Henny!
No? You can't hear me?
Oh, no, it's already answered.
O'Henny, how are you?
Oh, let me try that again. Oh, Henny, can you?
O'Henny,
unmute
can you
now?
hear us?
Oh, he dropped off. So. Oh wait, no, he's back. All right, oh Henny, can you unmute now?
Can you guys hear me now? Yeah, can you hear me? No? No?
We can hear you.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to, I'm sorry, I have a weak signal here. I just want to say thank you so much to the Council on Aging, the amazing work you do year after year. You ask for peanuts, and you do amazing work caring for every corner of this town. It's incredible. You know,
Amazing technology.
Yeah, I would.
I believe you're as important as the schools. And I just, my question is relating to the vans and the transportation support, because that seems to be a key part of being able to serve everyone equitably in the town and get out. And you're asking for grants. If you don't get the grants, what will happen in terms of transportation? And would you ever, what other resources would be available to you to be able to support your transportation needs?
Thank you for your kind words too. Well, I did go in front of the Capital Committee last year and was not granted a vehicle. So I think with the condition of the two larger vehicles that I mentioned tonight, I would think very strongly of approaching capital again next year. But I certainly am going to investigate these grant opportunities that help. They're state grants specifically for mobility issues of disabled and elder. So this was new to me to learn. So I'm planning on vigorously investigating it. But if it doesn't work, I would have to go in front of the Capital Committee to request one, because it's, a large van is, 150,000 or so.
Thank you, O'Henny. Jay?
Hello. My name is Jay Fundling. Thank you for coming tonight. I'll count myself as someone who did not realize all the great things the Council on Aging does until tonight. So I was very impressed with your presentation. When you're talking about financial assistance to seniors, I'd like to ask about something. The Warrant Committee is very involved with the town budget and the town taxes. And I know that the town has a program that lets seniors defer taxes until they either sell their home or pass away. And I know that program was actually improved in 2020, so about 2-3 years ago. I'm sure that the town financial people could tell us how many seniors are taking advantage of this, but can you tell us, do you discuss this program with seniors in town, and do they like it? Do they not like it? Are they suspicious of it? If they're not taking advantage of it, what's your thoughts? What's the thoughts of the seniors in town on this program, if any? And I have a follow-up question too, but sorry.
Okay, thank you. So that tax deferral program is run out of the assessor's office. So they don't come through me, so I actually don't have a good feel for who is applying for that. I do know, from what I'm aware of, that the income levels for that program are very low. So many people who are living in Milton do not qualify. Their income exceeds the limit to participate in that program. What does come through me and the Council on Aging is the Senior Tax Work-Off Program. So every year, I can take up to 25 older adults over the age of 60. That also has an income level, but it's reasonable. And the participants in that program can earn a $1,500 property tax credit by working 110 hours volunteering in various positions throughout town. The town hall greeters that greet you when you enter town hall, many of the positions are filled that way. We have volunteers in the schools, at the library, DPW. So we do have an active list of participants in that program. But in terms of your question, I don't know. I do not have a good handle on how many participants are in that tax deferral program, but that would be the assessor's office.
That's fine. I'm sure we could get the numbers from the assessor's office. What I was hoping to hear from you is, you said you help people sign up for food stamps, sign up for other sort of financial help if they really need it. So I was hoping to get from you maybe like a subjective, when I discuss this with the seniors in town, they don't like it because of this, or they do like it and they all say they're going to sign up, or...
The only feedback I've heard is that the income level is so low that it's moot. They can't apply because they have, their income is too high to participate in it.
Okay, thank you. And if I could ask one other question, which is sort of on a different topic, but hopefully really quick. You talked about getting grants. Does the town have someone to help you write those grant applications, or are you doing it yourself?
We're doing it in-house ourselves. As far as I know, there was talk about hiring someone who would assist town department heads in writing grants, and I don't believe that position was ever filled. I would advocate strongly that would be a wonderful thing to add to the to the town. It would assist departments across the board. We do what we can to learn about grants, investigate them, try to find volunteers to assist us in writing them. Our bandwidth, we're really at our brink in terms of the volume of people that are coming through our doors every day, and the 3 full-time and 1 part-time staff person that we have. We're straight out all day, but thank you.
Yeah, that's, thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Amanda, you have your hand up.
I do. I have to echo what everyone else has said and just applaud you guys for the work that you do. I similarly had no idea of, everything that the Council on Aging does, so thank you. I had a question, and you might have answered it, but I have really bad Wi-Fi apparently, and I froze. For people who are using the transportation, is there a cost associated with that? How does that piece work?
So what we do is we make available our transportation to anyone over the age of 60, resident of Milton, who needs it. What we have implemented is a suggested donation. So for rides within the town of Milton, we charge $4 round trip. For rides to neighboring towns such as Quincy, Weymouth, Dedham, Canton, we charge $8 round trip. And for rides to downtown Boston, we charge $15 round trip. And
Bargain
so
around.
it's a bargain, and it's optional. So not everyone contributes.
And so how would you budget for that? Because you wouldn't really, I guess you could look at year-over-year numbers of how many trips are being taken. And again, it's excuse me, it's voluntary to pay for it, but how would you for that, or estimate for that? Or especially, I think I can't remember the number increase that you said of members that you have. How do you manage that, and how do you estimate for how many people you would be transporting each year, or can't you?
Well, it's growing, like I said, and so for the budgeting of it, I have 6 part-time and 1 full-time van driver, and it sounds like a lot, but they're all wonderful Milton gentlemen, and currently, and some of them work 1 day a week, some of them work 2. They might be working part-time in another job. Those positions, except for the full-time driver, those positions are paid for out of a grant that I receive from the state every year, which is the Executive Office of Elder Affairs Formula Grant, and it is I get $12 per resident over the age of 60. So that's how they're compensated. The only other cost really is fuel, and I am asking for a slight increase in the fuel line. And then purchases of the vehicles. Like I said, I'm going to try to use a grant or go in front of capital. But there isn't really a budget per se. It's really staff and fuel.
When Amanda's done that, here's my hand.
Judy.
When we met to talk about your budget, I think we discovered that although you get this grant at $12 per person, your dues went up to belong to this group that gives the grants. And so if your dues went up, your per person $12 actually comes down because you paid dues to get this money.
No, the dues are paid to
Do it again for me then.
The dues are paid to the Massachusetts Council on Aging, which is just to allow Milton to become a full member of, and
That's
to
over here.
reap the benefits of what that state organization offers, which is training, development, grant opportunities, things like that. It's the state of Massachusetts Executive Office of Elder Affairs that provides the formula grant that pays Milton $12 per senior. And in that grant money, out of that grant money allocation each year, I pay the 6 part-time van drivers and the 1 part-time outreach worker. So that's the salary for those.
And
So
that's-
that number I'm anticipating will be going up because next year, because our number increased by close to 3,000 more residents. So that, and I'll be getting more money in that line. But as Amanda pointed out, we're expanding so much that it's necessary, you know, and able to be able to service the people in the town. I'm glad we're getting compensated for having that many more seniors.
Just a follow-up question, I'm just curious too on that. So, do you have to register the folks that are 60 or older, or does the state automatically get that from the census data?
They get it from the census data.
Okay, so, because I was looking at your carrying cost per person, so that naturally goes up based on the census data, your money would increase
Right.
as you go through there, but your costs are increasing, I think you said 30% on fuel costs
Right.
of vehicles, so I was trying to, I get where you're going, I'm the other side, I think.
Yeah.
I see what's happening, yeah, okay, thank you, I was trying to rationalize that. And one last question, if someone did want to make a donation, you know, cash donation or check donation, or a check, did it make it out to the Council of Aging, how did they do it?
There's 2 ways to do it. You could make it out to the Milton Council on Aging, and that goes into what's called the Gift Revolving Fund. Or you can make a donation to the Friends of the Milton Council on Aging, which is the 501c3, excuse me, that they're charged with fundraising for the Council on Aging. So we have bi-monthly meetings, and I can go to them and say, I'd like to have a presenter that costs $750. Would you mind sponsoring it? Things like that. So there's 2 ways to make donations, and they've been a wonderful support. It's great to have a Friends group. Thank you.
I'm looking, I have it. It might be tricky to find it and bring it up. Your FY24 budget proposal. I'm showing on Schedule A as 339,356. You had indicated that you're here tonight, that there's a request for a supplemental of 5,000. Is that 5,000 reflect? Yep. And so it's on top of. So your request to us for FY24 is that number that you presented to us, the 339 approximate number, plus 5,000.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Just so that we're all clear on that. Tom?
Just got another question. I believe, and correct me please, it's the state allocates $12 per resident over 60 if you sentence down. Is there any indication from the Council on Aging for the Commonwealth that money will increase?
Yes.
Through inflation? And can you tell us how much? Maybe?
So the Massachusetts Council on Aging has requested in their budget request an allocation of $14 per senior statewide. So I believe, I may have breaking news, but I believe when Governor Healy released her budget numbers today, she did approve that $14. But I don't know if that will be approved by the, yes.
Thank you.
But it's wonderful to know that Governor Healy is supporting, you know, the needs of seniors in the state and recognizing that a $2 increase is needed.
If I have one more, I just want to echo, you know, the thoughts of everybody here on the board. And I think as a member of the Warrant Committee, I'm hearing a lot of stuff about housing, Milton building affordable housing, and my parents lived in Milton all their life. They passed, but they were fortunate to use the Council on Aging and transition to Fuller Village. They were very fortunate to do that. But I think, I just wanted to comment, but I think as we discuss affordable housing in the town, I think the elderly should be a big part of it.
Definitely.
As we talk about, excuse me, I'm losing my voice, the town farm and other places, I think other boards and committees should hopefully, I trust they will, discuss the major issues of residents who lived their entire life in Milton,
Right.
who have paid taxes here
Right.
their entire life, to be able to avail themselves of the affordable housing.
To
that
stay
we're
in
planning to live in Milton, like the 90% number I saw out there. I think that's very important, for people who have given their life to the town.
Oh, thank you for recognizing that. And yes, we see it every day. Requests for affordable housing for seniors, and it's lacking, unfortunately, in the town. But I appreciate your comment that it should be something that should be addressed and considered when we talk about affordable housing going forward. Because not everyone. I actually worked at Fuller Village for 7 years, so I'm very. It's a wonderful community, and but not everyone can afford to live there.
Yeah,
So-
exactly, and it's a great part of our population that is sometimes forgotten
Yes,
in these conversations.
yes. So thank you for recognizing that.
Most of them are moving out of the town.
Yeah, exactly.
They have to look outside because you can't afford it. I'm in that same basket.
Yeah, I can say I purchased,
Yeah.
fortunate to purchase a home in Milton from a very elderly woman, and you could see the liens
Wow.
on the house. Sad.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time.
Of course.
Thank you.
I've learned a lot too.
Thank you. Thanks for all you do for the town.
Thank you.
I wouldn't go on vacation first.
Only if she brings you, right?
All right, Mr. Milano, welcome aboard.
Good evening.
Our next agenda item, let's just go with, can you please give us an update on the FY24 budget?
Sure. I'm just trying to think the best way to do this. I can pull up a few slides that might be helpful just to kind of frame the conversation and give you a little bit of information graphically rather than just have me say it. Give me a moment here and I'll pull it up. Okay. So when I was here previously, well, it was last month now, now that we're in March, I had just given kind of a big picture on the budget, and I'll do a little bit of that and just fill in some of the stuff that was not ready when we spoke last. Two main updates and changes since we last met. First, that we have our state aid number from the governor's budget that was released last week to cities and towns. And as I may have mentioned before, typically we receive that in early January. By mid-January, with the new governor, she didn't release her budget until March 1st today. But they had released the state and local aid information to cities and towns earlier last week. So for Milton, state aid went up $902,000 on a net basis from fiscal 23 to fiscal 24. So that's good news, and I'll have a little bit more information on that in a moment. The other big change or new information was that the town's free cash balance was certified at $4.4 million. And that was certified on February 9th of 23. And again, I have some more information into kind of what went into that. to provide you some background on that. So on state aid specifically, so state and local aid covers a big bucket of different monies that flow to Milton and to all the cities and towns in Massachusetts. There's money that we receive as receipts, and then there's money that is the state assesses on cities and towns that is withheld from us from our receipts. So our receipts are up $1.26 million over fiscal 23, driven primarily by Chapter 70 education aid, which is the aid that the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education provides to municipal school districts. State-owned land, which is basically a tax that the state pays on state land in cities and towns. And then a smaller adjustment was unrestricted general government aid. That's just money that cities and towns can use for any purpose, any municipal purpose. That went up 2%. That is more typical than the other buckets. The assessments that we pay are also up about $360,000 by all the town's retired teachers receive their health insurance through the state retirement system, through the Group Insurance Commission. So that has had a slight increase. The MBTA assessment that we pay had an increase. And there are some tuition charges that the schools pay based on where some of their school population is. So as I mentioned previously, you take our new money, subtract what the state charges us for assessments, and that gives us a net aid increase of about $900,000, which is good news. Not every city and town receives that much money in terms of increases year over year. I will just note that our budget forecast already included in that a minimum aid increase of about $135,000. So when we're talking about the town's budget, that net state aid increase of new money is really about $770,000 because we had already accounted for some of it. Just in terms of some history, state aid, this is Chapter 70 education aid. We've come close to doubling the amount of education aid that Milton receives since about 2017, which is pretty good. In communities I've worked in, that is not what they were receiving in terms of education aid. The state does have a new law, the Student Opportunity Act, that pushes more money to school districts, and that was approved a few years ago. So that is one of the effects that we're seeing, that Milton's apportionment of the Chapter 70 education aid has been increasing. I mentioned briefly the unrestricted general government aid. This is more flat. It increases basically by the amount of new revenue the state expects to bring in on an annual basis. So this is not a big bucket of new money for us. It was a 2% increase from fiscal 23, which is about $70,000. State-owned land is the big changing one, which we don't really have any information for as to why, other than that the state is putting more money in the budget appropriation for state-owned land. So we'll take it. I can't tell you why that's happening, but we're happy it's happening. We have doubled the amount of money that we take in from our state-owned land in the last few years. I wouldn't say it's something that we can rely on as to keep growing at this rate. As you can see just from looking at the past history, it's usually flat. Sometimes it's gone down. For it to be increasing at the rate it has been is good news for us. So that's the state aid piece of it in terms of our revenues. In terms of free cash, so our free cash, again, is an outlier, over $4.4 million in free cash certified this year. As you can see, this is a significant outlier from where we've been in a few years. I wouldn't even say an average is close to $2 million, but I think a $2 million figure is a little bit more typical than that $4.4 million number that we have now. So where did it come from? Free cash is several different things flow into it. I know, and Amy and I had discussed it with you folks in our last meeting, but this is a little bit more specificity as to what those sources were. When the town set its fiscal 22 budget projections, it brought in money in excess of those budget projections in fiscal 22 to the tune of $1.2 million, primarily from motor vehicle excise tax and meals tax. License and permits is basically building permit fees, so that was another big increase. And then our state aid numbers were a little bit higher than we had anticipated. And I'll just comment on the state aid generally that's typical, because what will happen is the governor will put out her budget on state and local aid. Then the House will take their turn. Sometimes they'll put a little bit more money in Chapter 70, put a little bit more money in unrestricted general government aid. Then the Senate will go. Then they'll all meet and combine a budget. At some point, they'll pass it. So we'll build the budget around the governors. By the time it actually passes, that's usually a little bit more. So that's something that we typically see on an annual basis, where that state aid number will be a little bit higher than we project initially. The second big thing that flows into free cash is turnbacks from departments. So if a budget is appropriated at $1 million and the department only spends $900,000, $100,000 will close out to free cash, spent or encumbered at year end, I should add. Fiscal 22 is kind of a funny year. There was a really high health insurance turnback of almost $1.1 million. That is atypical. That's almost 10% of that budget. So that is something that doesn't typically happen. It was just the rate increase that the budget was applied to did not match what the premium increase was going to be. So the town appropriated more money for health insurance than was needed. It closed out to free cash at the end of the year. Police had a lot of turnovers. When a senior officer retires, they're at a much higher income on an annual basis over those new officers we hire, and especially with police, where going through the civil service hiring process, sending them to the academy, getting them on the street, it takes a long time. So there's often a lag between an employee retiring and somebody coming in. So that explains most of that turn back there. We are still having some vacancies on the police side. We have 2 candidates in an academy now and 3 vacant positions today. But we're not looking at turnbacks on that size of $450,000. The other 2 that I just put on here just to flag: information technology. The director's position was not filled. It is now filled. We are currently actively recruiting and advertising for an IT assistant position. That's the number 2 job in that office. And lastly, unemployment. Unlike businesses, we don't pay into the state unemployment insurance trust. We pay our unemployment claims essentially up front to any employees who are on unemployment. So it's one of those accounts that fluctuates because we're not putting it out into a trust. So if there's a year where the town has not let go of any employees, no employees go on unemployment after they leave service with the town, we'll typically see a turn back if that happens. And it can go the other way. If there's a year where several employees leave employment and they claim unemployment and they get approved, we might see that budget higher than is typical. The last big piece of this is that at the end, last year when the town was going through its free cash certification process with the state and the town's test didn't quite match up, so the state withheld $840,000 of free cash from last year's certification. So this year, Amy was able to work with them to get that released. So that $840,000 that is included in this $4.4 million is really from last year, but the state did not release it last year. And then there are various other sources of about $300,000. So in terms of what is that $4.4 million, mostly departmental turnbacks, primarily due to health insurance. A big piece of it is budget projections. And then obviously what is truly a one-time revenue source is that free cash from last year that was released for fiscal 22 free cash certified amount. Went through that a little bit quickly. I just wanted to quickly point out that in terms of receipts and our revenues in excess of budget projections, we've been bringing those revenue projections up. In fiscal 22, they're still pretty low because of the ongoing uncertainty around COVID. When that budget was being set, the budget was about $8.5 million in local receipt revenues. The actual was closer to 9.6. Fiscal 23's budget, the year we're currently in, the revenue estimate was about $8.8 million, 8.9. And then for this year in fiscal 24, our current projection is $9.2 million. So we've acknowledged that those revenue numbers were higher than what had been budgeted in the past few years. We've brought that projection up. So right now we're at about 96% of fiscal 22 actual in terms of what our projection is in fiscal 24. So we like to be conservative on those local receipts. That's pretty much as high as we would push those projections right now. But I did want to address that since it's one of the components that plays a part in free cash.
Sure. The local receipts, does that include the free cash last year or not?
So of the 4.4 million, about of the 1.2 right here that I'm showing, that's mostly from local receipts, not entirely, but a large component of it is.
for the 8.8 million to 9.2 million include the free cash from last year?
No, these are just our receipt estimates for going forward. So when we're building our budget, we say how much we're going to bring in this year. And that's what we've been increasing it because our history has been so strong, even through the impacts of what had been.
Year-to-date for fiscal '23.
We're tracking, I'd say we're going to be probably in the ballpark that we were in fiscal '22. So that fiscal '23 number was still a little bit low. So we've already started talking about where we should put that free cash. So the first place that we've identified spending some of that out and made a recommendation about it is in terms of the town's capital budget. So one of the warrant articles obviously is I think it's Article 4 is the town's capital budget. And we usually use free cash in a combination of borrowing authorizations to fund new equipment, facilities improvements, infrastructure projects around Milton. Right now, my recommendation to the Capital Improvement Planning Committee has been to use $1.2 million of that free cash for capital projects, for vehicles, equipment, technology, school technology, facilities projects across town buildings, school buildings, in addition to some debt authorizations for capital. And that presentation was made not this past Thursday, but the Thursday before that, and the group is reconvening again tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. if anybody wants to join us. Lori will be. Then the other places where we've put kind of markers down is in terms of making some transfers over to stabilization. The town has used stabilization funds over the past few years, or taken money out of stabilization throughout some of the impacts due to the budget from COVID. With the appropriation that was made into general stabilization in this year's budget of $1,050,000, that will replenish all the money that had been taken out. So we entered into pre-COVID era, money was taken out, now money's been replenished, now we're back where we were in terms of pre-COVID. The goal would be to now say, here's a lot of one-time monies, let's start to rebuild those reserves back up, because with our reserves staying flat over the past 4 years, our budgets have gone up, so our reserves as a percent of our total budget has fallen. So the goal would be to try to build those back up, so the next time there's an economic downturn, the town is in an okay position to withstand it, to be able to use that stabilization money to keep people in their positions, to keep projects funded, and keep budgets full. The other place where we've identified money is to make a contribution to the town's OPEB trust, so other post-employment benefits, mostly retiree health insurance. We have a big unfunded liability for that. The select board has a policy recently adopted around starting to pay down those liabilities, and that policy states that we'll make an appropriation to the trust of a minimum of $100,000 over the next several years. And then when the retirement system is fully funded in a few years, maybe sooner, we'll start putting more money into that liability, start paying down that liability for future generations.
Right now?
It's about $160 million. The other thing that we've done is we've identified some one-time expenses in our level service budgets from departments. So we've allocated some free cash to those. Typically with free cash, we'll look to capital projects, we'll look to putting money into stabilization, we'll look into funding non-recurring costs in our operating budget before we start talking about maybe funding some operating budgets with free cash. The $361,000 includes the town's fiscal '24 reserve fund appropriation, which is $250,000. That's a fund that's set aside. Transfers out of it are subject to approval of the warrant committee, and they're supposed to be for unforeseen expenditures. So we felt that was an appropriate use of free cash for fiscal '24. I have two more on there anticipated. So the school building committee, we're expecting a warrant article from them. They have a meeting Monday night. That will be before the select board on Tuesday night. They've submitted 3 warrant articles. 2 of them have been sent over related to the Guile Road mechanisms. The third one is an appropriation. They had a $40,000 appropriation that they've mostly used up. So I've just kind of tagged the placeholder amount for that in anticipation of what they might bring over. We'll see once we get that on Monday. And then we've been receiving money through the opioid settlements that states have reached with the opioid distributors and manufacturers, as well as some of the pharmaceutical companies. We've received to date $155,000 for that. So we intend to make an appropriation of that same amount to be used in accordance with the opioid settlement agreements. Basically, there are 8 buckets of ways that towns can use these monies to support prevention, treatment, and other substance abuse issues in their communities. So that is one other place that we've identified for an appropriation out of the free cash. That money came in this fiscal year, so it came in fiscal 23, so it's not really in the $4.4 million, but rather than wait for it to close to free cash, then appropriate next year, we figure we can do that now. So if we were to move forward with what I identified on this list, that would give us a remaining balance in that free cash of about $1.39 million. So that's where that stands currently. There are 2 big expenditure items that are outstanding: group insurance, which is health insurance, and life insurance, mostly health. That has about $1 million increase in our budget right now. We are meeting with our broker tomorrow to get our final anticipated premium increase, which will allow us to finalize that budget. We've pegged basically about a 7% premium increase right now. If it comes in half that, we can look to reduce this appropriation. We don't really know where that's going to come in yet. We will know tomorrow. We've had okay claims year, so that's in our benefit. General insurance is our liability insurance. It's not a huge number, $142,000, but we should have that final on Monday. Those are the 2 big ones that are outstanding. So with everything I've described, where things stand presently is the quote-unquote rollover level service budget is about a $2.1 million deficit. That needs-based budget that we described previously is about a $4.8 million deficit. Our work has been trying to get to that $2 million one balanced. Between potential use of free cash for operating budgets and additional use of ARPA federal funds for operating budgets, I feel pretty decent that we'll get there, but it'll give me a few more days, and we're still working on a few things to try to square that circle. And I think that's all I really had for tonight. Happy to take questions on any of this or comments as well.
Jay's hand is up. Is it?
No. I saw Judy's.
Judy?
No, it's okay. I have the advantage this meeting.
Yes,
because
you
I
do.
don't have to wait for the little laptop to find me. I have a question.
Sure.
That when you were going through the insurance cost.
Yep.
You had one that was general insurance.
Correct.
For liability. Could you describe
Sure.
what would be in that?
Property liability, public officials liability, workers' compensation, as well as 111. It's called 111F, so that's injured on duty insurance coverage for police and firefighters who are injured on duty. So it's a few different things make up that big bucket.
And that amount of approximately $142,000 covers all that?
No, that would be the increase. So it's about $1.1 million budget. Right now we have it. Yeah, that 12% is the increase. One thing I'll note on that is we don't have collision coverage on any of our vehicles right now. So part of that increase will be to add that coverage. Or it is to add that coverage as we've done so.
Okay. Thank you.
Steve.
Thank you. So my question is we have a $4 million extra this year, $4.4 million extra this year, and we're going to spend a good amount of that this year, and we know the budget's not going to go down next year, so what's going to happen? We're going to have a huge shortfall.
Correct.
And we're going to have to do it overall.
If folks are interested in keeping level of service as it would be funded in this budget if that's where things end up.
How about we put a little more in the bank for next year and not spend so much this year?
It's also an option. And I think that's what we're trying to work through over the next few days. We had a finance committee meeting Monday morning with the select board finance committee with the counterparts on the school committee as well as the full school committee. And the question of how much to put into stabilization came up. But I think it's important to make that investment now. And part of, so I have it pegged as $750,000 going to general stabilization, $250,000 to capital stabilization. And the intention there is for that $250,000 not necessarily to be a permanent infusion that just stays in the capital stabilization ever. It's more of a down payment on next year's capital budget. Like, we have this money now, we don't need to spend $1.5 million in fiscal 24's capital budget. Let's set aside a starter amount for fiscal 25's capital budget because, everybody in town benefits from that capital budget.
But we have 2 more fire houses we got to build, and they're going to want new fire trucks, I'm sure. Just a huge amount of outlay in front of us. And
there's an engine included in this year's capital borrowing authorization to replace. They replace the engines on every 5 years. One gets replaced, and this one is up now.
We can't hardly wait. So thank you.
Of course.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, appreciate it.
All right.
Do we have a copy of that presentation?
Do we have a copy of that?
This one right here,
Yeah.
I can distribute it. I'll distribute it. I'll put it in the shared folder, and then we can also send it out. That's
Thank
how
you.
I access things, but I don't want to assume
Like passing that stuff.
No, yeah, that's fine. It's all there.
All right.
Can I ask you a couple questions?
Jay, yes, please do.
Okay. One question is, thank you for laying out the free cash and how it came, how we missed how it came in as such a pleasant surprise this year. I guess what I'm trying to figure out, and I think you answered it, but if you could spell it out again. Is this, we treat free cash as one-time money, like a windfall, we shouldn't spend on recurring things. But when I look at like motor vehicles excise tax, meals tax, those came in so high, those don't seem like one-time issues, they seem like recurring issues. Now, you sort of addressed that, but you could address that again. And police, you said there are 2 positions that aren't filled. That also seems like it might be recurring. So I wonder if treating the free cash as only to be spent on one-time items doesn't really reflect that it actually reflects a bit of conservatism built into our budget that we expect to come through year after year. So can you help me figure out how much is actually one-time windfall, and how much is conservatism baked into our budget?
Sure. I think, there's a couple of pieces to that. In terms of our revenue projections, they have been low over the past few years. I think it's good to be low. It's not necessarily to be good as low as we have been, and that's why we've brought those back up. So let's say we we come in at, we're projecting $9.2 million, knowing that should be less than what we actually bring in. And if we bring in 9.6 or even $9.7 million, then that's $400,000 to $500,000, whereas the free cash number we're looking at this year is really about $1.2 million over estimate. So I think to have that number is probably more accurate in terms of where we want to be in being off from our revenue projections. So if you want to say, yeah, that $500,000, that is the delta between our estimate and our actual is recurring, sure, but we be conservative for we try to be, that was tough grammar. We try to be conservative for a reason, because sometimes mid-years things happen and revenues fall off a cliff, and if you're not prepared for that, that means making some tough choices mid-budget year. So building in a little bit of wiggle room is helpful, and letting that close to free cash and then using that for one-time monies in the following year. And I think, speaking to staffing, part of the reason why we sometimes have big turnbacks in departments is employees will leave mid-year budgeted at a high amount. Maybe we don't fill that position in the rest of the fiscal year. Maybe we do, and even if we do, it's at a much lower amount. But when we turn the page on that budget year and start over for a new budget year, we adjust the budget for what the new person's salary actually will be. So we don't expect to carry forward turnbacks in positions just because there is turnover. We reset each fiscal year as to what we anticipate. So I think that addresses some of the police piece. I think, police departments across Massachusetts are facing staffing shortages and trouble getting staffing in for various reasons. But so that's been just one of those departments that's a little bit slower to get back up to full staffing. And as I mentioned, we have 3 vacancies currently in fiscal 24's budget. Those positions are all recalibrated back down to where they will be hired at, not where the incumbents have been.
Okay. Can I ask a different question about the stabilization fund?
Yes.
So the general stabilization fund is about $5 million right now, give or take?
Correct, yep.
Okay. And I guess, all my years of town meeting, it always seemed like the amount we put into the stabilization fund was just a random number. And now that I'm here and digging into it more, it still feels like that. I guess I always heard the argument, let's put more in there so that we can have better credit rate. But I look at, we just came through a once in a century pandemic and we spent $1.8 million out of the stabilization fund. And now we have a stabilization fund of $5 million. Getting hit with probably the worst thing any of us could imagine. We spent, less than a quarter of that? So it makes me wonder how much we really need in the stabilization fund. And I don't love the answer that, the credit rating agency that's, I can talk about that, but I don't see, we've talked about this offline, and I don't think we really have a agreed upon policy in this town as to what the stabilization fund should be. And since we don't, I don't know why we're putting the number that we want to put in there, or putting anything there, to be honest, at this point. So,
I don't necessarily disagree in terms of we should look at our stabilization funds because ratings agencies want us to. I think that should be one of the many factors we look at. I think the more relevant comparison is to what happened back in 2008 and 2009 with the financial crisis, where mid-year the state stopped sending state aid to cities and towns and reduced those mid-year. And towns had to adjust their budgets mid-year because there was such a drastic shortfall in revenues. There was money flowing to cities and towns at that point that helped get through that, but not on any scale compared to the COVID experience. I mean, the amount of money, federal money that flowed to municipalities through states in the COVID experience was I don't even know the right word to use for it. It was just very much out of whack with what had been kind of historical norm. And I don't know if the politics of where we're at right now, we would expect to see that level of assistance from the federal government if we got to that. So I wouldn't want to rely on, we just went through a pandemic and the federal government stepped up, so we don't need to worry about our stabilization as much anymore. So I think that's just kind of an outlier. So I think we did well to get through COVID, but I think the reason we used $1.8 million from stabilization, we're able to put it back, is because we had a lot of support from other sources. So, looking at Milton, we want to have some money set aside for our services. Right now, the financial policy that's technically on the books is a goal of 5% in reserve, in stabilization rather. We're currently below that. This would bring us a bit above that. I'd say a 5% goal is probably a little low. So, what should a goal be? I think that's a financial policy that we need to take a look at. But when we have an unexpected free cash certified number of $4.4 million, that is a historical anomaly. let's put more money in the capital budget, what we're doing. Let's put some money in stabilization, which is what we're doing. And let's use some of that free cash on the operating budget. But I think those three things should go together.
I have a question. How frequently, sorry.
Jay, are you done?
Sorry about that, Jay.
I mean, I might want to talk about stabilization a bit more, but yeah, let somebody else talk.
I just had a question on how often the budget's updated for each department and who is that submitted to? And so that those funds, let's say jobs are not filled, who's aware, and are those jobs going to free cash if at the end of the year they're not filled?
So,
I guess that's a few questions.
yeah, no, I think what you'll typically see is there are smaller turnbacks from each department on a regular basis because that turnover will happen. And maybe when one employee leaves, it's vacant for a little while, a new employee comes in, maybe there's $5,000 to $10,000 in savings. So that'll flow into free cash, but it's on a much smaller scale than these outliers that we've described. So it's more about when it's consistently not filled. That's why we see these big jumps. We monitor budgets all the time. People come and go. We're able to usually fill those positions. This fiscal year, we've done pretty good at backfill and everything. I wouldn't say we had a couple of clerical positions that had been vacant for a while. A couple of police officer positions that have been vacant. So for the most part, we're doing okay on filling positions that people have left. And where there is turnover and there are savings, that'll flow to next year's free cash. So it will come in on.
I know, but are those budgets updated monthly, quarterly to send to anyone? I'm just curious of who manages so that the output of expenses to income are monitored so that.
Yes, I mean.
Mid-year is done. So does that mean every department hands in a mid-year budget?
No, it's one budget that governs their department for the whole year. Amy monitors, departments have full access to monthly budget reports, weekly budget reports, so they have access to all that to make sure they're staying on track, So throughout the year, that's a process we do. I request a year-to-date budget report at least monthly, and I go through it to see kind of how things are shaking out. So that's, in terms of budget monitoring, what our approach has been.
Jay, do you want to continue to discuss the stabilization fund?
No, I've still got something to do about that. Thank you.
Sure, of course.
I have just one question related to turnover, because I know you mentioned with police, that's something, across the state or even broader, there are issues with staffing. I know I've seen in some other industries that there's been a lot of turnover the last year or so. I was just curious if there are any different trends emerging with other departments. Does turnover seem pretty stable? Does it seem like it's changing, going up or down at all, either across the board or in any other pockets?
Yeah, what's tricky for municipalities to respond to is we can't react very quickly to changing environments, especially around pay scales. There are 7 unions on the town side. We have agreements with one of those 7. Those contracts expired June 30th, 2022, so those employees have been working without a contract since July 1. So, our mechanism to say, hey, the job environment is changing, we need to increase pay, is through that contract. But we can only offer so much within the parameters that we try to live within. So I think one of the things that limits us is certainly reacting to a changing environment. I think we've all seen how hard it is to hire people. Everybody has a job who wants one, right? And so you're now competing on salary and other things. Benefits, typically municipalities, we can offer really good benefits, especially around retirement. Health insurance, we're probably getting closer to the market, whereas health insurance benefits had been better on the municipal side. I think one thing for people of my generation is the paid family leave stuff. Municipalities, it's viewed as an unfunded mandate by the state, so we're exempt from paid family leave. So somebody of my generation who's 30 years old working in the private sector, they get 12 weeks when they have a child or whatever happens. to bring them into the municipal world, that's a really big benefit to give up to come over. So I think these are the factors that come into it. Pay is a big one. And, you're speaking, Chase is on this call, Chase Berkeley from DPW, because of the revolving fund that we have. But it's hard, it's challenging to find those kind of skilled employees for his department as well, because private contractors are just hiring everybody else and at rates that we can't quite compete with. So it is an issue. I would say it's more about we can slowly but surely catch up in terms of pay and everything, but we can't just start matching people and pay increases start going through the roof.
When you said that's only one of the 7 union negotiation contracts, may we be faced with an instance that we're going to have to retroactively pay those people? I'm in a union and...
No, that's exactly right. So we have in the fiscal 23 budget an appropriation to cover any potential estimated increases to pay in fiscal 23.
Okay.
In the fiscal 24 budget, we have currently money to bring them up to where they should be.
Okay.
We don't currently have that plus the retro payment.
Yep.
So we're still working on it. We need to either pay them out in this year or encumber that money or do something with the fiscal 23 appropriations to bring that forward to fiscal 24.
Okay, so that's like potential money that we need to...
It's already been appropriated. It's available. It's just a matter of moving it from 23 to 24 if that comes up. Hopefully it won't. But these negotiations could carry forward into fiscal 24.
Any other questions on the budget? Hearing none, we'll move on. Do you want to go to Kidder? I think people out there might want to hear that.
I think they will come. So in case there are any questions, the executive director might be coming over. So I think if we...
Oh, so okay, let's stick to the plan?
Yeah.
Let's stick to the plan.
If I could, Mr. Chair, could we maybe then just do the revolving fund for DPW?
Yes.
See that Chase Berkeley is here.
Sounds like a good idea.
So just in terms of big picture background, and Chase is coming over as a panelist now, we have a number of revolving funds on the books. Revolving funds now have to be created by a vote of town meeting to be established.
Nick, not to cut you off. Could you please describe for us what is a revolving fund?
Yes, I do.
How does that work? What does it mean?
Sure. So we have a variety of revolving funds on the book. Basically, they are set up for to collect monies that come in, specific fees typically, or other revenues to be held to then can be spent on a certain purpose. So we have a revolving fund. There's a Parks and Recreation revolving fund, obviously, that takes in all camp fees and then helps to pay for employees and maintenance and in camps and programs. We have other revolving funds on the books for the library when they rent out their space and they charge a fee. They get a fee in, and then they can use that on maintenance of the library. So there's several like that. Some for set up for lease payments where we've leased town facilities. Those lease payments will come in. They can go out usually to maintenance of that building. In this case, we have a warrant article to create a new revolving fund for the Department of Public Works to collect monies that we've already we do collect, but there's one change, so I'll let Chase take it from there in terms of what we're looking to do for this specific one.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members. Thank you for your time tonight. So yes, so the DPW is requesting to create this revolving fund, essentially to create a mechanism for us to accept payment, primarily from the gas company, but actually from any project. To do paving work on behalf of that applicant. So just a little background. So when someone wants to occupy or dig up a town way, they have to get a permit with the DPW, and we have a schedule of fees. And in that schedule, they require to pay an application fee and an inspection fee, and then several other fees that relate to the enterprise fund. So if you're putting in a water service, you pay a fee for the water, similar with sewer or stormwater. But The fees we're talking about for this revolving fund are just for right-of-way occupation and excavation. So that's essentially the gas company is the biggest permit puller in town. And in our discussions with them, the amount of work they've done over the past few years, there's a mutual interest to take their money and have the town pay with it, because we can get a better price for paving than they can. And one of the frustrations we have from residents across town is after the gas company works on the street that the town doesn't have any intention of paving. You'll either get a new trench or half of a new street. And the residents that live in that area have to live with the detours and all the upset and noise and the invasive nature of construction, and then at the end of the day, they get half a new street, and it just feels a little unfair. So what we'd like to do is create a mechanism for the town to accept money from the gas company or a large developer, say, and put that into an account with the town, and then use that money to pave the street itself and do a better job and a more complete job. And it's been done in the past in case-by-case times as in the form of a gift. So the gas company has actually gifted money to the town, which the select board can accept. But given the amount of work that's been going on over the last few years, and especially since all the explosions that happened several years back in North Andover and Lawrence, they've really ramped up the amount of gas mains they're replacing. So we just thought it prudent to set up an actual system and a mechanism to be able to do this recurrently while that's going on. So we did a little financial analysis of how much money would actually be diverted from the town receipts into this revolving fund, and that's about $50,000 to $60,000 annually that we collect through permit fees and inspection fees and licensing fees that we would divert from receipts into the revolving fund, and then we would create a new fee, which we would call payment in lieu of paving, that we would charge a utility or a developer and collect that money and then do the paving ourselves. So that's a general overview. I'm happy to go into more detail or answer any questions you have about it. But essentially, we just want to do a better job paving and certainly catch up on the paving in town. It's no secret that our roads are in tough shape in a lot of areas, and we really want to stretch those dollars as far as possible to make as many repairs as we can.
Thank you, Mr. Dorfman.
Send your list.
Does anybody have any questions?
It makes sense.
So this is presented to us as an article. The article being,
See Jay's hand up.
I'm sorry?
I just see Jay.
Jay, you have your hand up.
Yeah. Hi, Chase. Full disclosure, I work for Eversource, which is not the gas company in town, but it does gas other places. So what you're saying is, so we put the gas company payments in here, but also other fees? What are those fees, those other fees that we're going to put in here, what are they going to now?
So if the gas company were to dig up the street right now, they'd pay a $75 application fee and a $500 inspection fee to the town, and that would go into the general receipts. It doesn't go to the DPW, and we can't access that fund. It goes into the general receipts.
Okay, so this will lead to less money going to the town general fund, and it will go into this street paving fund, right?
Yes, and that was that $50,000 to $60,000 figure I gave you.
Okay, thank you. And so is the idea that instead of the gas company doing a halfway job, again, not the company I work for, with the other one,
Right.
instead of them doing sort of a halfway job, we would then go and do the full job and it would look better, right?
Yep, certainly to create that ability. So we do a lot of coordination with all the utility companies and try to align our paving program with their work, and a lot of times ask them to come in before we pave a street. But there are some cases where utility companies want to work on streets we just have no plans on. And in our discussions with them and seeing what they pay versus what we pay, we can pretty much almost always pave the whole street for what it costs them to just repair their trench.
That's exactly what I was going to ask. I was going to ask if our paving the whole street would cost a lot more than paving half the street, but thank you. You read my mind. Okay. thanks. And so getting back to what is a revolving fund? So the idea of putting a revolving fund is just so that the select board and the warrant committee don't take this money and spend it on other things. We're restricted to spending on what we're supposed to spend it on, which is repaving the street. Is that?
That's one part of it is kind of the earmark it for a specific purpose, and then it also carries over year to year, so that we're not constrained one fiscal year.
Okay. All right. Thanks much. That's all my questions.
And I'll just add, in terms of being able to access that money more quickly, if it was not set up as a revolving fund, it would close out at the end of the year as a general receipt, close out as a free cash, which then needs to be appropriated at a future town meeting. So it adds steps and process if it might not be necessary at all times.
Thank you for that. So this matter comes before us as an article. I'll read the beginning of that article in order to identify it for the record. We've all seen it, we've all read it, we're all familiar with it. This is the article to see if the town will vote pursuant to Chapter 44, Section 53, Big E, 1/2, the Massachusetts General Laws to establish a revolving fund in order to utilize trench excavation application fees, inspection fees, and paving fees paid to the Milton Department of Public Works for the purposes of et cetera, et cetera. Okay, that's the article. That article being before us, is there a motion?
What's the article number?
So we don't have an article number yet.
Okay.
So it is, we can refer to it as the article pertaining to Chapter 44, Section 53, E1/2, with regards to this revolving fund. Is there a motion on the floor?
Motion to approve the article.
Thank you. Kristen has made a motion to,
Second.
and then Allison has seconded it. Madam Secretary, would you please, because we have Zoom, would you please conduct a roll call vote?
Can I ask about the wording? Like in the past, we've gotten suggested wording from the select board or someone. So the rule here in bold is what? Recommended the town vote, and then everything you see above starting with the word pursuant?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You know, that's a good point, is that I didn't ask if we wanted to have discussion. So Jay, was there any other discussion that we'd like to have?
No.
So Jay raised an important question that would germane to that discussion. Okay, so there's a motion on the floor, it's seconded. Emily, would you please conduct a roll call vote?
Certainly. Kristen,
Yes.
Stephen Rhines,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Steve Geister,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Judy,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
JJ,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
Oh, Penny,
Yeah.
I am a yes. Dave,
As is my practice, unless it's a tie, I will abstain. And if it carries. So good job. We just did our first of many votes on articles for the annual town meeting. Right. You know, while we're talking about revolving funds, oh, okay. So the next, what do you think would make the most sense to do next, Nick? Want to go to PEG, Access Enterprise Fund?
Sure, if you want to go in order now.
Yeah. Might as well.
Okay, so all right, so PEG Access Enterprise Fund. This is a slight change, as you will all will remember from our December town meeting, we had 2 warrant articles related to the PEG access funds for reducing an appropriation and then increasing the appropriation back. At the time, it was because when the town voted to appropriate $600,000 for their fiscal 23 transfers from the town's money to the Milton Access TV incorporation, really, we didn't have that money in our account, and that vote can only happen if the money is actually sitting in the account. You can't anticipate future revenues as we would for any other budgetary action that we take. Every year, or really every quarter, we receive payments from the cable companies. A percentage of everybody's bill comes to the town of Milton for supporting public educational and government access stations in Massachusetts and around the country, really. We have an agreement with Milton Access where we'll then move those monies over to them, all the support that they provide, all the programming provide, their capital equipment, and so on. So all of that will remain the same. The only thing that we are requesting to change is the mechanism by which we hold on to these monies and appropriate them out, rather than have it under an account that we can only appropriate if the money is in the account. On the day of the appropriation, we would recommend moving it to an enterprise fund, in which case we can anticipate revenues in the forthcoming fiscal year and make an appropriation based on those anticipated revenues. So what would happen is, if this article were approved as written, all the money in this PEG Access and cable-related fund account currently would move over to a PEG Access enterprise fund, and then we would do the annual appropriation articles just as we do now, with just the source changing from a PEG Access and cable-related fund to the PEG Access enterprise fund. So it's more of a bookkeeping, accounting mechanism just to change that component of what kinds of monies can we appropriate at town meeting when we go to vote. I think that's everything on that one.
I have a question. Is this just for Milton Access?
Correct. Well, let me rephrase. It's an account. It's an enterprise fund where all these payments that we take from the cable companies would go into.
Correct.
We have an agreement with Milton Access that certain percentages of the amount that the cable companies pay the town go over there. So in effect, yes. In theory, it could go to other entities too.
But that would still go through Warrant.
Exactly, correct.
So is this the same thing that Mike Zulus presented to us like a year ago? Connecting all the different town buildings together?
No, that was an institutional internet network to connect all of them. There was a small appropriation made out of this fund, which is an old expense. It went to town meeting and was approved. So they're combining federal funds with some of these monies to build out that institutional network.
Thank you.
Yes.
Would this PEG Access Fund be including any of this new municipal broadband expenditures?
That wouldn't be this article. That would be the appropriation article, which is an entirely separate article if it were. But this year, it's not. All the appropriation article will be in fiscal, and at this town meeting will be to move the money over to Milton Access.
Okay. And this could change year to year, what we
appropriate from it.
To who we appropriate it to?
No, it has always been Milton Access, and that's who it will go to, and that's who our agreement with is to send the money to. So the way these FCC has set it up, that the cable providers have to pay the municipality, Massachusetts has then set their own law that says that once the money comes into the town, it has to be appropriated out by the town to whatever mechanism it is that runs these networks for the city or town in that community. So it's a bookkeeping process thing and that we're trying to fix, but this should make it a little bit easier for us moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, and I think this is kind of why we have to re-vote. So does that amount that the people providers pay the town change year to year?
Yep.
And how far in advance do we know that that is going to change? Would it be before we're voting the appropriation?
So it's all percentage based. So we receive a percent on the bill, and then our agreement with Milton Access is that they receive a percent of whatever those payments are. So it's not so much a dollar amount that if the dollar amount doesn't match what we take in, it'll fluctuate based on what those percents are. As cable has changed and the environment has changed and the landscape has changed, the revenues, it's an interesting future where these revenues will go.
Yeah.
With the landscape changing and more people shifting to just internet and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
It's on your bill. If you get a cable bill, there's a payment on there. That's this money.
I don't know.
Sick.
Are there any other questions? Would we like to have a discussion? There being no discussion, there's a article that's before us, proposed article, to see if the town will vote to accept the provisions of Chapter 44, Section 53 F and a half of the Massachusetts General Laws establishing a PEG access fund as an enterprise fund effective for 2024, etc. Is there a motion on the floor? Do you want to say something? Want to be heard?
I just want to have a clarification if I could.
Sure.
We keep using the word proposed when we're discussing or voting on these articles. It would seem to me, because that's the proposed language and not what might be the actual words used. And here's your article, it's number 487. That's what you're voting on. Should we perhaps wait to see if any portion of this does get changed?
So we're at the point now where we're formally recommend, these articles, this language is as is. And so it goes back to like what Jay's saying, that we are voting on this language. That's that if we vote yes here, we would recommend to the town. And so the point about the proposed, it's just, it's language, but it has meaning. It doesn't become, so it's a proposal, the way I'm look at it, it's a proposal until the town meeting votes to accept it. And then it becomes, let's just say, law, right? It becomes an approved article of the town. So where we're at in this process is it's all a proposal until the town, the people of the town at town meeting make their vote to enact it.
So we don't expect any language change?
Well,
but it would have to come through an amendment process.
Right, through a process. So what we're doing here is doing our formal vote to vote on the language, the black and white, that's in front of us. So I'm not reading every word, but et cetera, is actual language that does mean something as follows. Right, so I could go on and on. We can have a lengthy discussion of the language. Steve?
Yeah, just a quick comment. So if we wait till the day before or all the articles done, we'll be here at 48 hours straight going through everything. So I think we kind of need to go through the process as things become available, as opposed to waiting till the very end and then trying to do it all. So just a comment.
Yep, and so, right, and so we've got 4 that are ready to go, 1 down.
A lot more to go.
Well, let's rock it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. There's a motion on the floor. I'm trying. So was there a motion on the floor?
No, I'll make a motion.
Krista makes a motion.
I'll second.
Allison seconds it. Emily, would you please conduct a roll call vote?
Kristen?
Yes.
Stephen Rhymes.
Yes.
Allison. Yes. Lori.
Yes.
Steve Geister.
Yes.
Tom.
Yes.
Judy.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Jay.
Yes.
Jay, could you unmute?
Jay, you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Sorry. Yes, do you hear me?
Yes.
Is that your vote?
So Jay, that was a yes.
I was already voted.
Oh, I'm unsure, but I'll go with yes.
Okay.
Just enough.
JJ.
Yes.
Amanda.
Yes.
Penny.
Yes.
Dave, I'll still always ask you.
I will abstain. Thank you. Okay. Nick, you want to go to Special Purpose Stabilization Fund for opioid settlement funds?
Sure. Right now, we are hoping to take this off the warrant. We had initially planned to, so these are the opioid settlement monies that I talked about earlier. To date, we've brought in $155,000. There was another batch of settlements just announced in the last couple of weeks with Walgreens, Walmart, Teva, and one other company, CVS. So again, these are settlements related to the opioid pandemic that they caused over the last few years. Milton, over the next 20 or so years, will receive a total of about $1.3 million, $740,000 of which will become from the distributors and Johnson & Johnson, $600,000 from this other settlement. We've brought in $155,000 to date, and we'll continue to receive these monies through 2038 in various amounts based on how the settlement agreements shake out. The rules around these monies are tightly controlled. The state has issued guidance on how municipalities according to settlements that have been reached. So any expenditure of these has to be done in compliance with that. We had intended to create a stabilization fund, so what would happen there is the money would flow into a new special purpose stabilization fund. Then we would go to town meeting, we would ask town meeting to vote the money out of the stabilization fund, and then the money would be spent on XYZ program, intervention, project, whatever. Based on discussions with the Department of Revenue and the Division of Local Services, we can skip that stabilization fund step and appropriate these monies through the departmental budgets to a department, and we're debating whether that would be Board of Health or Select Board, at which point we would appropriate, for example, that money that we've received to date, $155,000, to that entity, and then they would be responsible for then using that money, putting that money to use through programming, through investments in treatment and prevention, however they wanted to handle it. And then that money would stay available to them and not go through the closing out and then it would have to be reappropriated. So essentially what we'll do is one of these departmental budgets will be increased by $155,000 for this explicit purpose, rather than create a stabilization fund. So that's a long-winded way of saying, hopefully this article will be removed from the warrant, and instead we'll see a departmental budget change and Select Board or Board of Health, depending on where it makes sense to put it. And I'll just note that we don't have any specific plans or projects or programs in mind. It would be more about giving the authority to that entity to do so later. But get the money in that budget so the work can start now. So that's all I have on that article.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Jay.
Okay. If it's just in their budget, sort of goes back to what I was asked about revolving funds earlier. It's in a revolving fund. We know exactly to the dollar how much should be spent on this purpose. If it's in their budget, let's say they don't spend it this year or next year, and then we sort of lose track of exactly how much of this money in the budget was for the opioid settlement. It just sort of gets mushed in there. I don't doubt anyone's intentions, but I worry that people will forget exactly how much is supposed to be spent on substance abuse or whatever. Does that question make sense? Thank you.
Yeah, I would just note that it would be set up separately on our books. It wouldn't just be in some random account in the departmental budget. So it would be something that we would have eyes on and oversight of, in that sense, that we would see how the money was being spent. We have to report regularly as to how the money was spent under the settlement agreements. So it's a whole reporting. That would be the case if we did the special purpose stabilization fund route or not. And we have guidance from the Division of Local Services that this is an appropriate way to approach it.
Henry has his hand up.
Oh, Henny, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation of this guidance. My question, it may be just me and maybe just affected that before that we were my challenge is us taking funds that are allocated, as Jay said, it feels too loose for me just to throw it in the budget. It feels the purpose of this, the reason it's laid out in 2030 is we've all seen the great impact of the opioid crisis on our communities. And to be honest, the reason it's a long tail, we obviously aren't seeing the way of interest, but the impact is expected to last, for part of our generation. Right? Meeting kids today in high school who are dealing with these addictions are going to have longer term impacts. And so I just wonder if the use of it and allocating it to the health department and just saying do whatever, or I know there's control ways could we be more prescriptive and actually help those who have been impacted by this? Could we be more stronger in our earmarking? Right, their families, if you know someone whose family is going through this is a very costly, painful, difficult thing that many do not want to talk about. The resources are desperately needed. So I just wanted to understand more about the allocation and how we're thinking about it from a long-term health perspective. So that's sort of like James' question. That makes sense.
No, I think it's right, and so my goal right now is to get the money appropriated by town meeting so it can be put to use by a department, Board of Health, or whether that's the select board that will have the final say on how these programs would be funded, because the alternative would be that it has to wait until a future town meeting for an appropriation at a later date. So, just as we would put money in departmental budgets for programs that we're not prescriptive about explicitly what that program is, but we're supporting that department's programming initiatives. My approach for this has been similar. Let's get required first step before any of this dollars can be spent by the town of Milton is to have town meeting vote to appropriate it into a budget, and that's where I'm at in terms of a recommendation. And that vote would be, obviously, the town meeting vote doesn't necessarily have to stay what it would be for, but these monies are restricted by the settlement agreement, so they have to be used in accordance with that, and that's something we would monitor and make sure that happens. So it's more this first step is what we're trying to do to get it appropriated by the town meeting, so it then can be used going forward immediately July 1st of 2023.
Judy.
Who will make the decision on which department this will be overseeing this?
That's what we're working on now, and then I'll make a recommendation.
It's gonna, no one else is gonna be involved in making that? You won't, in other words, in your sole discretion, you are gonna make the decision which department?
In working with the departments, the conversation this was the conversation I had with the health director to say, does this feel like the right place for this money to go? Is this a place where you would want it to go? Mm-hmm. Those are the conversations we're having, and based on that feedback, I'll make a recommendation.
Is there a reporting requirement from the town to someone outside of the town to report that these funds are being dispersed in accordance with the requirements?
Yes.
Who do we report to?
We have to report to the courts, really, through the law firm that's handling this on behalf of essentially all of us. So there's a portal set up. Brown Greer is the national law firm that's handling it. We go into the portal to request payment of the monies, and then we would use the portal to report how those were spent.
Okay.
And I see Amanda's hand.
Amanda has her hand up.
Hi. You might have said this before, but so, and I'm still understanding how the budgets work, but to the point of like the free cash this year, so that tends to be, that's money that wasn't used in a budget. Is that correct, that it gets rolled into that? So how do we, are there things in place that ensure that this doesn't then get rolled into free cash, it doesn't fall under that same, the same structure, the same way that happens with other department budgets?
Yeah, we've received guidance from the state that for this explicit purpose, that money would be allowed to be authorized and then not have to close out to free cash. The money can be available until it's spent. So it's being treated a little bit differently than a typical appropriation would be by the state.
You have to follow like guidelines, like you have to do things, like those choose on the money not to be spent at all, like you have to submit things to the
Correct,
state.
yep.
Okay. So there's not this, so at this point, this is not an article that we're expecting to be in this annual town meeting?
The article I am expecting not to need anymore, but this will show its face in terms of a budgetary recommendation of an appropriation.
Okay. Okay. Fine.
Can I ask one last question? Sorry.
Jay.
You did such a good job earlier in this meeting of convincing me of the virtues of revolving funds. Why? I think you sort of explained why we don't need it, but is there a downside to having a revolving fund? That still seems like a great, why can't we do it? Or why shouldn't we do it?
Because it's being treated by the state as the way the state is treating it and advising municipalities to how it can be appropriated. It's not being treated as like a fee that a revolving fund could be. So the state law that governs revolving funds is a little distinct. This is being treated as a general, is being treated as a receipt that has to be appropriated. So that's why we can't set it up as a revolving fund.
So we can't. Okay, thank you.
Their money's reserved for appropriation by the town meeting. Revolving fund monies would not be reserved for appropriation. So it's a municipal finance thing.
Thank you.
Right, vice an enterprise fund or a special purpose stabilization fund. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Are there any other questions or discussions, though it's not an article for a vote? Tom?
This one. Just you've had conversations, Mr. Milano, with both Board of Health and Select Board?
We started with the health director.
So there's been no conversations as to the Select Board and their desires?
I wanted to go to them to say the health department was interested or was not interested, like just so that we had that background first, because the first place you would think of is let's talk about health department first.
Yeah, of course.
So.
That's all.
Yeah.
Hey, let's talk about disposing of abandoned and unclaimed property.
Sure.
Can we just talk one more question about?
Go right ahead, Henny.
Sorry. So, I know we've had this question. So, one of the large part of the states, can we just agree that when we're talking about how we use this, even though it's in the budget, this is a tough term budget, those of us whoever's allocated at our department, I think there needs to be a special conversation about how this fund is going to be used, because a lot of it is used for purchasing naloxone, right, which is the ablation treatment for those who have overdoses. And frankly, to me, buying the treatment from the same people who made the opioid, to put money back in their pockets, just seems absolutely ludicrous. I know I work in history, and I would love for us to think about ways that are not just going to the state set up naloxone purchasing program, so J&J and all of them can get their money back to the treatment too. And I just want to make that statement here. I would love for us to think more creatively as a town in terms of how we fund it, as opposed to just doing the nonsense purchasing program that's set up by the state when it comes to allocating these funds. Whether that's Board of Health or that is a police or fire, wherever that money ends up, I do think I agree with you made a comment that I would love to think more deeply about how that money is allocated in the line, and we're happy to support this on that basis. That conversation.
No, I appreciate those comments, and I'll certainly bring those back.
I think double-edged sword is the people who are alive because of Narcan. I mean, we can't discredit that either. And I know the fire department uses it a lot. And it's tough. But I think we have to acknowledge that as well.
Okay, that's part of the conversation that you can have with the Board of Health.
Yes.
Thank you. Please help us out. What is Mass General Laws 200A, Section 9A all about?
Sure. This is a little bit of a housekeeping effort on our part. In 2009, the state law changed around abandoned or unclaimed property. So if you see the treasurer's ads and newspaper ads and radio ads and TV ads, if somebody owes you money, you have a bank account you forgot about, it closes out as unclaimed property, it goes to the Commonwealth under the treasurer's control to chase down whose it was. For municipal unclaimed property, for example, we write a check for $200 to vendor ABC. They never cash it. This mechanism allows us to notify that vendor after a year, put their name on the website, put their name in the newspaper, reach out to them at their last known address, and if all those efforts fail, then the town has that money close out to the general fund and it stays with the town. This is the process that we follow today. That said, it's a local acceptance, which requires town meeting vote to accept these provisions of law. That hasn't happened. So we would like to clean that up because the alternative would be to go through the treasurer's system, in which case the money leaves the town and goes off to the state's treasury to be chased after in terms of trying to find the person, and then it closes out to the state treasury. So essentially, we would like to keep the process that we're using, clean that up by accepting this statute properly, and then continue to use the process that we've been currently using. The treasurer refers to it as tailing, so if you've heard that terminology before, that's what it is. It's just any unclaimed property in the custody of the town. We follow the process to reach out to them. It takes well over a year to do so, multiple efforts, and then the money would close out and stay with the general fund here in Milton.
Thank you. Any questions? Would we like to have a discussion? Is there a motion? The motion on the proposed article that the town vote to accept the provisions of Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 200A, Section 9A, etc. Tom makes a motion.
Second.
Judy seconds it. There being a motion seconded, Madam Secretary, would you please conduct a roll call vote?
Kristen?
Yes.
Stephen Ryan?
Yes.
Allison? Yes. Lori?
Yes.
Steve Geister?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Judy?
Yes.
Yes. Jay?
Yes.
JJ?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
O'Penny? And Dave?
Abstain. Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Milano, would you please give us an update on the sale of the Kidder Branch Library?
Sure. Kidder Branch Library on Blue Hills Parkway, 101 is the number. Discovery Schoolhouse, as you probably know it. Owned by the town, formerly a library. it's under the control of the select board for disposition in terms of whether to sell it, and if to sell it, how much. The town has put it out to RFP a couple of times. On both occasions, the Discovery Schoolhouse responded. Most recently, they responded to a request for proposals that was put out earlier this year. The select board voted subsequently to award sale of the property subject to negotiation of a purchase and sales agreement to Discovery. There were two proposals that the town received. One was from Discovery Schoolhouse for $500,000. The other from a small company to convert it to 4 two-bedroom housing units at, and the dollar amount is escaping me. It was either $450,000 or $400,000, and I'll get that for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I thought it was so $400,000. The select board evaluated the two proposals based on the evaluation criteria and the request for proposals and on price, and voted to, as I mentioned, select the proposal from Discovery Schoolhouse. So that was done a few weeks ago now. At our most recent meeting, the select board voted to open the warrant to add an article to authorize the select board to sell the Kidder Branch Library in accordance with the purchase and sale agreement negotiated between Discovery and the town on the warrant for the Maytown meeting. So we will have to iron out that purchase and sale to get it to this warrant committee to hopefully have a recommendation for the Maytown meeting. That is our goal, to do that. I don't have much information beyond that. I know this has gone to town meeting a couple times and been deferred back or no action taken, but we have put it out to a couple times, and I think I can convey the board's feelings is that this is the proposal that they have in front of them that is best to move forward on. The other thing I'll add is that although it's under the custody of the select board to sell, the proceeds of this transaction go to the library trustees, as it's a library property that was provided to the library. So the $500,000 is not a windfall for the town. It goes as and would be held in trust with the library trustees, and I think it would be a non-expendable trust. So only the income and investment income on that would be expendable. So in terms of where that money would go, it would go there, and it's currently non-taxable property. It would remain non-taxable property in terms of potential property tax income, as they are educational institution.
Are there any questions? Tom?
Mr. Milano, do you know if there are any restrictions on the deed in terms of subsequent transfers of the property? So if Discovery Schoolhouse wants to sell, have we put anything in there?
They have offered to include a right of first refusal for the town.
Great. Thank you.
Do we know what the taxes would be if the other option was chosen?
I talked to the assessor briefly. He said depending on quality and improvements, the assessed value would be closer to $1 million to $1.5 million based on that location. The issue there was one of the criteria in the RFP was that it would be compliant with zoning, and that would have not been compliant with the zoning of the district. The zoning would not have allowed. So they could have gone to the Board of Appeals for a variance, but under the current zoning, that would not have been an allowed use.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Jay?
Okay, so thank you, Nick. We're desperate for land in this town, so desperate that we were crawling all over it ourselves just a month or two ago to try to purchase part of the Fontbonne property. And now here we have some town-owned property that we're selling. So I want to ask you, what has the town done to make sure that no, the town does not have any use for this property, no, the best thing to do is sell it and we don't need it, because land in this town is rare.
Yes, I mean, there have been those conversations, and I know that the school department was was included in terms of, does this have any use for the school department? And at that time, it was not taken up, and has not been taken up as a potential site. It is pretty small. It's not the biggest building in the world, but that hasn't been a something that they have seen as a viable option for their needs.
How close is it to Tucker?
I can share that. So, and I'll say full disclosure, both of my boys went to Discovery. And so last year I had one boy at Discovery and one at Tucker, and I'd go pick up the one at Tucker and walk like 5 minutes down the road. It's like less than a quarter mile.
Well, we didn't buy the Hoosick, so I'm just wondering why. I know.
I would just say, I think to Mr. Milano's point about the size, this is so much smaller.
But if it's close to Tucker, my thought is that you would have the ability to use it as like taking classrooms that are needed, and maybe put a preschool classrooms.
Or even after school.
Or after school.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing.
Perfect.
It's so close to Tucker. So to me, it's one of those things. Again, are we using it to the town's benefit? We missed out on opportunity with Hoosick.
Absolutely. I think that it was the 2019 special town meeting that we talked about this, the sale.
Maybe. I wasn't on
That sounds right when I was going through the warrants.
No, I know Discovery School also had a lot of work on the property to repair it, and I was happy with town meeting voting it back because, I think the property was donated by Nathaniel Kidder for the purposes of the library, for the youth, the town, and Discovery Schoolhouse is a great school from what I've heard. And I think it serves those needs. That's why I asked the question about could we buy it back? Because it was donated to the town.
Yeah.
So I think it's great that Discovery has repaired the building and has moved forward, and I think it's a good idea. I prefer it be a library. I miss my East Milton library, but I get how that works. But I'm happy to see at least this town has offered this to Discovery at such a low rate, to keep it.
Yeah.
So I'm in favor, I think, of something like this. But
What's the downfall of continuing to lease it? Why are we looking to sell it if it seems like this is going to work?
So from Discovery's perspective, I think they want a permanent home, but it was given to the
I'd
town.
I'd be happy to recognize if you want to come and join us. Why don't you come and join us?
I don't need to say very much. Brian Sheffin, the director of Discovery Schoolhouse. And just, should I sit here?
Please.
Just on that point, the deed states that if the library doesn't want to use it for quote, proper public library purposes, then it must be sold. And the proceeds to put into a fund to benefit the library.
And I'll just add that if the town is going to use it, it's supposed to use it as a library. So if it's in the possession of the town, it's supposed to be as a library.
Right.
In accordance with the decree and the gift to the town.
Right, and this select board at some point asked the state for an opinion on whether it was okay to rent it with the rent benefits the library. But the state said, no, it's not. It has to be under the deed and the request to the town, to the town for the benefit of the library. It either has to be used as a library or it has to be sold and the proceeds benefit the library.
Judy.
If one looks at the real estate pages in our town, did it flash it before anyone that's a bargain basement price for that property? It's almost like yard sale free.
I can see thinking that with the price. I would say I've tracked it just again since my boys were there, and my understanding was there were multiple RFP, I think 3, and Discovery was pretty much the only offer. I think I'll say the realities of that property are limiting to what it can be used for. For kids, it's great. It's imagine an old-fashioned schoolhouse, like with the one big room. So it's a great experience for kids, but in terms of other uses, it's really limited. So I think there are just realities of that property that it's like, if it were a bargain price, there would be a lot more competition for it. It's just my sense, seeing that Discovery's been the bid each time.
But how big is the lot? How big is the lot? Just out of curiosity, or
I think it's just under half an acre. Does that sound right?
It's like 0.42 or something.
And I do, I'm obviously biased. We would love Discovery Schools to own the building, but we've been very happy renting it as well. But, we have 3 times responded to RFP. Only once was there another offer. It was less from a developer. So we're the highest offer the town's ever received for it. I know the library trustees approached all the entities in town that might be interested, the school department and the rec department and Milton Cable and Milton Hospital and the food pantry and anyone they could think of. And I watched, I'm going to say 8 or 10 or 12 tours go through the building, and before there was a price attached, nobody was interested. They couldn't make it work. So I feel like it's a good deal and a good offer to the town, and we'd be very happy with it.
Well, thank you for clarifying. That was very helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'm going to go back. If there's any questions. Gavin,
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we can report back to this committee once we reach that PNS level. I feel like that's a dangerous word around here with our luck with Farm Pond, but we will keep you updated. But the chair asked me to provide an update just because it was the newest article that had come across the transom.
Well, thank you for that. We look forward to an update. We would like to see an article. If I understand the timeline, but we are open for business. And if you have shoes and a shirt on, we got to serve you. All right. So thank you, Mr. Milano.
Sure. I just wanted, if I could, Mr. Chair, just one additional update. One of the articles that we had held as a potential on the list was a historic district commission in a historic district. There's presently a historic district study committee that has been working on identifying potential historic district or 2. They had planned to bring forward a potential bylaw to this town meeting based on where they're at in their process. That will not be ready and will not be coming in May. So that's another that had been on my list that I had distributed, but will be coming off. I just wanted to provide you that update.
Those are the updates we like.
I know. Well, I maybe should have saved it for the next time. A little bit of good news where I can.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. It's late. The last item was generic. We put this down as a generic on our agenda just so we can discuss generic warrant prep information if we need to, so we can go on the record. I don't have anything other than just a general warning that we're about to get really busy. We've given out dates. We should expect that we will meet on those dates. If we don't have to, for whatever reason, Jubilee. I understand that people have conflicts and can't make every date, and that's okay. That's one of the reasons why we have so many people. We're not professionals at this, obviously, right? And so we do have jobs, families, kids, responsibilities, things we have to take care of. So that's one of the reasons why we're such a big one. I also did want to take a moment to recognize Lorraine. Lorraine has served our committee. She's been on the warrant committee before. She was great. We were lucky to have her. Just due to commitments in her life, she had to resign. Okay? And that's another reason why we have so many people on our committee, is that we have lives. And she said that she, wrestled with it and just, made the decision that she had to make. And so, good on her. That's what we're here to do. We're here to make the tough calls and to be real. And so on behalf of the Warrant Committee and on the town, I'd like to thank Lorraine D. for her service to us. So thank you, Lorraine. Okay? All right. Judy.
Quick question. It's the only one finger up. Do we wait to replace a member if someone
Good question.
cannot fulfill the term?
So what, apparently this will be the procedure. The Warrant Committee, we actually choose the replacement. The way that I would propose that we proceed is that...
just put a name and a hat here. Come on.
Auditions?
That's cute.
So the town moderator, in putting together the Warrant Committee, had sought and received applications and had conducted interviews going into this. So he and I have spoken, and I've asked him to please review the applications that were pending, and then he's going to do that, and he's going to contact these people, and then see if there's still interest, right? And then he will provide us with some suggestions. And I think that he has served us well. I mean, he put us together. So I think that what we'll do is we'll stand by, we'll let the moderator vet, and then we will talk about it, and then we will make a vote. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Yes, O'Henny.
Just on that previous one, I think it's fair to say that the point of the Warrant Committee was selecting the membership the last year. There was a lot more. There was a very hard activity. And so candidates who submitted their names at that time might have been becoming more. There was a lot of activism around this. So I just want to caution and select the people who are on that list. I think we may be served by just saying, hey, there's, I don't know, that's you just told me about Broad, but that's my personal conviction. I trust you, Mr. Chair, and believe that obviously the decision come to best for me.
So we're going to go to the waiting list, so to speak. Okay.
Well, we're in a position where we can trust but verify. So let's see what we get. Ultimately, it'll be up to us. It being 9:44.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Is there any opposition to that motion? It carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had it.